Mic check 1, 2, 3. Okay. Pasting the link on Twitter. Let us see how many turn up. So I had a poll. Okay, absolutely no one so far here. Alone talking to myself. Let me wait. Okay, we have one listener here. So yesterday I had tweeted, and the tweet contained a poll regarding whom should I be reading. The poll contained two names, respectively Ravish Kumar and Paulo Coelho. So Ravish Kumar won by only one vote. Okay, so as promised, today we are going to read Ravish Kumar's book. Waiting for others to turn up. I think आज सो गए हैं सब. Okay. Walaikum assalam, Nancy. Hopefully you're doing good. As promised, आज हम रवीश कुमार का पढ़ेंगे. So we have almost 3 listeners here. थोड़ा सा वेट करते हैं, then we'll start. Cool. I guess आज सब नींदी मींदी कर रहे हैं, सो गए हैं क्या सब? वालेकुम अस्सलाम आइनन, वेलकम टू द स्ट्रीम. थैंक यू सो मच यहाँ ज्वाइन करने के लिए. Okay, we have a fourth listener also. Waiting for others to join. देखते हैं, थोड़ी देर के लिए वेट करते हैं. Then we shall start. अहमद फराज का कुछ पढ़ लेते हैं. फरमाते हैं कि वालेकुम अस्सलाम सोफी लियाकत. तो 2 ही बंदे हैं यहाँ पे जो सुन रहे हैं. चलिए ठीक है, कोई नहीं. फरमाते हैं कि उसने सुकूत शब में भी अपना पयाम रख दिया। हिज्र की रात बाम पर माहे तमाम रख दिया। आमदे दोस्त की नवीद कुए वफा में आम थी। मैंने भी एक चराग सा दिल सर शाम रख दिया। शिद्दत तिश्नगी में भी गैरते मैं कशी रही। उसने जो फेर ली नजर मैंने भी जाम रख दिया। उसने नजर नजर में ही ऐसे भले सुखन कहे। मैंने तो उसके पाँव में सारा कलाम रख दिया। देखो ये मेरे ख्वाब थे, देखो ये मेरे जख्म है। मैंने तो सब हिसाब जाम बर सरे आम रख दिया। अब के बहार ने भी की ऐसी शरारतें कि बस कब के दरी के चाल में तेरा खिराम रख दिया। जो भी मिला उसी का दिल हल्का बगोशे यार था। उसने तो सारे शहर को करके गुलाम रख दिया। और फराज चाहिए कितनी मोहब्बतें तुझे। और फराज चाहिए कितनी मोहब्बतें तुझे। माऊ ने तेरे नाम पर बच्चों का नाम रख दिया। सो आई गेस इतने ही बंदे हैं आज। टू पीपल ओनली। दो लिसनर्स हैं हमारे पास सिर्फ। हाँ, लिंक यहाँ आ गई है ना ट्विटर पे। मैंने शेयर तो कर दिए। हम जल्दी आ गए या हमें सुनने के लिए अब कोई न बचा। लिंक तो मैंने शेयर की है। वालेकुम अस्सलाम आयशा। होपफुली यू आर डूइंग गुड। ओके, वी हैव 5 लिसनर्स ऑलमोस्ट। थोड़ा और वेट करते हैं ताकि सब आ जाएं, क्योंकि मैं बुक शुरू कर रहा हूँ, फिर बीच में रुक के फिर नहीं पढ़ सकता। ओके ओके, तब तक हम अहमद फराज का कोई और कलाम पढ़ लेंगे। फरमाते हैं कि एक नज्म है। ये मेरी गजलें, ये मेरी नज़में तमाम तेरी हिकायतें हैं। ये तज़किरे तेरे लुत्फ के हैं, ये शेर तेरी शिकायतें हैं। मैं सब तेरी नज़र कर रहा हूँ, या उन ज़मानों की साहतें हैं जो ज़िंदगी के नए सफ़र में तुझे किसी वक्त याद आए। तो एक एक हर्फ जी उठेगा पहन के अनफास की कबाए। उदास तन्हाइयों के लम्हों में नाच उठेंगी ये अप्सराएं। मुझे तेरे दीद के अलावा भी और दुख थे ये मानता हूँ। हजार गम थे जो जिंदगी की तलाश में थे ये जानता हूँ। मुझे खबर थी कि तेरे आंचल में दर्द की रेत छांटता हूँ। मगर हर एक बार तुझको छू कर मगर हर एक बार तुझको छू कर ये रेत रंगे हिना बनी है। ये जख्म गुलजार बन गए हैं, ये आहे सोजा गटा बनी है। ये दर्द मौजे सबा हुआ है, ये आग दिल की सदा बनी है। और अब ये सारी मताए हस्ती, ये फूल ये जख्म सब तेरे हैं। ये दुख के नोहे ये सुख के नगमे जो कल मेरे थे वो अब तेरे हैं। जो तेरी कुर्बत तेरी जुदाई में कट गए रोज़ शब तेरे हैं। वो तेरा शायर, तेरा मुगन्नी, वो जिसकी बातें अजीब सी थी, वो जिसकी के अंदाज खुसरवाना थे और अदाएं गरीब सी थी। वो जिसके जीने की ख्वाहिशें भी खुद उसके अपने नसीब सी थी। न पूछ इसका कि वो दीवाना बहुत दिनों का उजड़ चुका है। न पूछ इसका कि वो दीवाना बहुत दिनों का उजड़ चुका है। वो कहका तो नहीं था लेकिन कड़ी चट्टानों से लड़ चुका है। वो थक चुका था और उसका तेशा उसी के सीने में गड़ चुका है। यस, आई एम ऑल्सो गुड। आई एम गोइंग गुड। फाइन। सो कल मैंने एक प्रॉमिस किया था कि हम रवीश कुमार और पॉलो कोलोहो के बीच में पोल रख देंगे एंड विल सी कि कौन इस पोल को जीतेगा, एंड वी फाउंड आउट दैट रवीश कुमार वन इट. सो वी आर स्टार्टिंग विद द बुक ऑफ रवीश कुमार. तो इनकी जो ये बुक है, इसका नाम बुक का नाम, टाइम कितना आया है? 10:42. चलिए आप शुरू ही कर लेते हैं, ठीक है ना? तो हम्म, तो बुक का नाम है द फ्री वॉइस ऑन डेमोक्रेसी कल्चर एंड द नेशन. ठीक है, तो ये मैं आज शुरू करूंगा. लेट अस सी कितना टाइम इसमें लगेगा. आई गेस अराउंड 2 to 3 days में ये खत्म हो जाएगी, जितना मुझे लगता है. ठीक है, सो लेट अस स्टार्ट विद इट. जो बुक है इसके अंदर डिफरेंट डिफरेंट चैप्टर्स हैं. जैसे पहला चैप्टर है स्पीकिंग आउट, दूसरा रोबो पब्लिक एंड द बिल्डिंग ऑफ अ न्यू डेमोक्रेसी. वालेकुम अस्सलाम मुदस्सिर, मैंने देखा नहीं, रियली सॉरी. हाँ, तो तीसरा इसमें नेशनल प्रोजेक्ट फॉर इंस्टॉलिंग फेयर. चौथा इसमें वेरावर अ मॉब गैदर्स इज हिटलर्स जर्मनी. पांचवा बीइंग द पीपल. छठा बाबाज ऑफ इंडिया आर हियर टू स्टे. सातवां हाउ वी लव. आठवां फंडामेंटल राइट टू प्राइवेसी. नौवां लेट्स ट्रीट आवरसेल्व्स टू एन आइसक्रीम दिस इंडिपेंडेंस डे. आई एम रियली सॉरी मुदस्सिर भाई, मैंने देखी नहीं ये वाला मैंने देखा नहीं, स्किप हो गया मेरी नजरों से. सो स्पीकिंग आउट, पहला वाला चैप्टर शुरू कर रहा हूँ कि अ जज डाइज. His son and wife are unable to summon up the courage to speak their minds. Shouldn't the Chief Justice of India assure them of safety, making it possible for them to speak? If a citizen out of fear loses the courage and the will to live, to speak, who will reassure him? If, as the upholders of the Constitution, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Prime Minister cannot provide their reassurance, who can? Have we allowed power to become such a blanket of fear that it will keep terrorizing us? And we will pull the same blanket over ourselves for security, lying helpless under the very terror that makes us tremble. An ordinary stool. वालेकुम अस्सलाम सिनेमैन, वालेकुम अस्सलाम. इस तरह अभी अभी शुरू किया मैंने, तो अब सुनिएगा. An ordinary citizen too needs answers, or else everyone will believe that if this thing can happen to a judge, absolutely no one is safe. I want to confess something to you. I felt fear too when I read the story. Yet I am devoting this prime time show to it so that Anuradha Biani does not feel that her brother, the judge, was probably killed and we did not speak. Judge Loya's son should not feel that someone killed his father and none of his countrymen. We aren't afraid. We are. But the way out of this fear was to bring this story before everyone. Now, whatever will be, will be. Now, whatever will be, will be. This closing sentence of the NDTV India primetime show of 23rd November 2017 was for my viewers and also for myself. I had found release from the fear that had helped me and in its suffocating grip for 2 days. Though through the duration of the show, I would felt that every single word was holding me back, as if to warn me, enough, don't go any further. You cannot put yours and yourself in danger. just to overcome your fear. Fear does not end after you have spoken out. Even after you have spoken out, fear lies in wait for you with its nets and sneers. But I had spoken and I was free. That November afternoon, I was heading to the NDTV studios to conduct my usual primetime show. I was wrestling with the silence surrounding the allegations that a judge had died in suspicious circumstances. The silence lay thick even 3 days after the news broke. A report had been published in Caravan magazine which raised questions about the death of the judge Brij Gopal Harikrishna Loya, who had been presiding over the CBI court in the Sohrabuddin Sheikh fake encounter case in Gujarat, in which BJP President Amit Shah was the prime accused. No statement from the judge's wife and son had come after this story broke. Was it because of some terror that the family could not say anything? Can people be so afraid that they cease to have faith in everyone, even in themselves? I was myself living the fear that must have been inside them. I was worried too that the story in Karwan could be wrong. I felt as if I had somehow put myself on the line. The story wasn't mine, but now it had become also mine. I am making no claims about the story in Caravan, but the fear and the silence surrounding it had set up a shuddering within me. Perhaps fear is not even the right word for this, but doubt. Doubts create all sorts of restlessness within. They shatter one from the inside, like someone is using a hammer and chisel to chip away at a wall. Before I broke down and became even more of a ruin, I decided to broadcast Judge Loya's story on prime time. It was almost 9 p.m. The fear was threatening to overwhelm me. There was no one around me with whom I could share my apprehensions. I looked within myself and saw a news anchor falling into a deep dark well. To save himself all that he had, his voice, which he wanted to reach to people at maximum pitch and volume. I used each word as the step of a ladder and began to climb out of the depths of my fear. And after I finished broadcasting the prime time episode, it felt as if I had kept a promise which I had made to Judge Loya's wife. I had also freed myself of fear. But afterwards, others' fears lay in wait for me. My phone buzzed incessantly. The voices at the other end were all chilled. I felt as if I wouldn't even be able to get home. Unpleasant doubts crept into every conversation. I gradually began to feel alone. It felt as if each person was delivering a final warning before going away. The story in Caravan could have been wrong. That was plausible. But other than that apprehension, had I also crossed that line which dictates that certain people and versions of certain stories should not be questioned? Were people actually genuinely so afraid of that man at whose doorstep Judge Loya's story finally washed up? Fear can be real. It can also be imaginary, but the factors which create and control imaginary fears are very real. So speaking out will never be easy. It may even well be an act of bravery, but what is significant is something else. When you speak, you must find yourself. You first become your own interrogator before asking questions of others. If your life is clean and uncorrupted, your voice will have the ring of the truth. To speak, you must preserve. It isn't a single act done in a moment or without effort. You strain your entire being from within. In the same way in which Usain Bolt leans his body forward into the wind at the finishing line. The farther you lean your body into the finishing line when you speak, the closer you will come to the truth. But the truth is not just a set of bald facts easily gathered and stated. The truth is also defined by its time, the prevailing environment, and the systems that run the institutions in that environment. So while a ribbon awaits Bolt at the finishing line, for people like us, there is a concrete wall. When you reach the finishing line, you run straight into that wall. Everything, your job, your credibility. Your life itself is at stake. Where you fear, where your fear ends, is where those who sit at the top of the power hierarchy go to work. You are freed from one fear, but they will spread 10 more around you like booby traps. Courage is nothing. Courage is nothing but the struggle to emerge from one circle of fear into another, then another, a constant struggle to be free of fear. These days, whenever I write something, say something, afterwards people introduce me to new and different varieties of fear. Even if what I say is commonplace and non controversial, people caution me. Aren't you afraid? Take care of yourself. Whenever I hear these words, I see a world of fear on the speakers' faces. These exhortations to keep safe have made people cowards because they are not warnings to speak carefully, but warnings to not speak at all. Whenever someone asks me if I am afraid to speak out, fear spreads its wings out within me. I go back to that Ravish of my boyhood days, who would recite the Hanuman Chalisa and chant Jai Bajrangbali as he walked underneath the bale tree. I had heard someone say that ghosts reside in bale tree. If there was no one on the road, I would run as fast as I could, my slippers in my hand. As I ran, my body would become limber and strong, and I would forget the ghost. I would even slow down. For the longest time, I thought that in my later years, my fear had vanished because I had felt that the bale tree behind. I now understand that it was the act of becoming limber and strong which had vanquished the fear. If we do not show mental and physical strength in the face of the fear, it will keep us forever standing underneath the bale tree. This was what used to happen in the cinema halls too. As soon as the hall lights would dim, I would become afraid and I would screw my eyes shut during the scenes of violence. I have never been able to sit through a rape scene in a movie with my eyes open. At school, the fear of failure would kill me every day during examinations. I was an ordinary student. I had no grasp of science subjects, and thus the months of March and April used to be exceedingly sad. My father said to me during one of these moments of fear, if you study gradually all year around, you will have no need to cram during examinations. And there will be no need to be terrified either. I was leaving home to sit for the mathematics paper during my board examinations. I cried so hard that Babuji had to come along with me. A bucket was filled with water and a rose floated upon its surface, the way in which it is done when a girl leaves her marital home for the first time after marriage. I just wouldn't leave home. I still don't know why Babuji went along with me that day. In the normal course of things, he was unbothered with which class I was studying in, with which subjects I was bad at, and which ones I did well in. As the time came for us to apart, I felt like clinging to him and weeping one more time. When he left me at the school gate, Babuji said, you shouldn't be so afraid. Why do you have such fear within you? You have prepared well, haven't you? I always remembered Babuji's words. When I came to Delhi and started studying for my graduation, I won over my fear of academic failure. When all my friends would go home to Patna for holidays, I would sit in the library and work on my fear. I made friends with my BA examinations. My mother too remains unfazed by any circumstances, laughing. She often tells, no, Ayana. This one starts crying before anything has even happened. Just the mention of examinations used to be enough to make him cry. Uh, ऐसा एक मेरा दोस्त है जिसके साथ ये सब होता है एग्जामिनेशन सुन के ही वो आज भी अगर उसको कहेंगे कि 10th क्लास का आपका फिर से एग्जाम है ही विल स्टार्ट क्राइंग दिस इज द सेम नोयाना बिकॉज ऑफ whom I have become free of fear in all other areas of my life. But But that story is for another telling. This man, whom people asked to be careful and stay safe, was a coward for a large part of his life. I feel a great deal of fear even today. I am very afraid of making mistakes. I make that journey from fear to courage every day. My days start with the trolls, abuses, and threats, and end with the thought that I should be careful for the sake of my job. Not a day has passed in 3 years during which I have not heard people talking about the possibility that I might lose my job. But fear is also what saves you from rashness. It is that resting place between courage and rashness, that point from where you commit to a course of action. Power knows who should be removed from the path of its onward march and when. It maintains a strict calendar and schedule. Despite that, in a democracy, people keep alive the act of speaking out. And the thrill of this journey between fear and courage has destroyed my sleep. It has gained me abuse and sometimes made my ears resound with applause. One must pay other prices for speaking out too. When colleagues with whom I had worked for 20 years were having to leave the company, many among them looked in my direction. There was a great distance in their eyes. They felt that it was because of me that the government had punished the organization. During the time I ran into a former colleague in the office bathroom, all he asked was, couldn't we have changed our line of work? I asked him in return, so shouldn't we have become journalists? This is so beautiful. My question did not answer his, and I did not have any other answer for him. The experience of losing a job is bitter for everyone, I thought. One should not feel bad or offended by someone's words at such a time. I kept standing before him like time that was already past. There was no point in expressing the pain that I felt at parting with him. I stood there as upon a shore, inwardly shattered. I do hope that in my colleagues' eyes, the men who did not like that a journalist should speak out are as culpable as I am. Couldn't we have changed our line of work? This statement sank its hooks deep within me. Should I instead have become part of the mob which kills someone on a moving train, which won't allow a movie to be released, which corners a man in his own home and murders him, which climbs onto the rooftop of a court of justice and unfurls the saffron flag? I thought these thoughts as I walked slowly out of the bathroom. The act of speaking out makes you alone. I have no friends in this profession of mine. Each one I speak to advises me to keep silent. Even today, I feel as if I am tiptoeing underneath the great pale tree of power. The only difference is that I no longer chant the Hanuman Chalisa. I don't implore God to preserve my life. Rather, I thank Him for all that He has given me. I analyze my facts carefully. I keep my pen straight and I keep my tongue clean. The ability to speak follows naturally. My speaking up and it's being viewed within the framework of courage. All of it is thanks to what happened after 2014. Post 2014, the political winds began to change course. Criticism of the government began to be equated with the criticism of the nation. A factory called the IT cell was set up, and many varieties of fear were manufactured inside its basement. The trolls of the IT cell mounted fierce attack on everyone who dared to ask questions. They were called many things, from anti nation and anti religion to even pimps of the opposition parties. Many journalists were cast in a mold of an opposition. They were called anti Modi. Even serving ministers began to attack reporters. The IT cell rapidly transformed media into Godi media, lapdog media. Many anchors and journalists crept into the laps of the power and began chanting the Modi Chalisa. The IT cell is not simply the unit of a particular party. It is a mentality which has formed among a large section of a society. I call that entire set the collective of people who share the mentality, the IT cell. This IT cell has transformed a large section of the citizenry into trolls. Many people find this idea of the mentality of the IT cell a joke. But this is a fully realized human resource which works extensively from the metropolis to far flung areas of India. Many of the news channels which work in today's India are an extension of this IT cell. This IT cell has its own laboratory, the WhatsApp University. The amount of history that this WhatsApp University has tried to teach in 3 years would not have been taught in 70 years since independence by all historians together. The only difference is that the history taught in the WhatsApp University is fake and poisonous. Even after India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru fell victim to this WhatsApp University. His clan, his religion, and his name were all changed and distorted. He became a greater villain than Jinnah, than whom there is no man more evil, even the IT cell and its parent family. Gandhi has not been superior either. In this case, the IT cell laboratory does what certain politicians cannot afford to do in public, though they privately wish Gandhi had never existed. The WhatsApp University has also extensively defamed, vilified, and abused journalists like Rajiv Sardesai, Rana Ayub, Sagarika Ghosh, Barkhadat, and me, and among others. The handful of us journalists who are only doing our job have been declared as traitors. We have been blamed for every injustice committed in India. A new benchmark has been set up in the WhatsApp University as far as speaking out is concerned. Why didn't you speak then, and why are you speaking only now? With this mischievous statement, the public has been handed a weapon. People have been told anytime they ask a question, ask them, where were you when that happened? I remained enmeshed among these questions for a long time. I kept thinking, I'm a journalist, I'm not myself a newspaper. I cannot comment on everything, and keeping quiet doesn't mean that I became a party to injustice. Why didn't you speak then? This is a design by which a sense of guilt is created within the person who asks questions. And those who ask that artful question conveniently forget to ask those who remain silent why they aren't speaking. For over 3 years now, I have found myself dealing and arguing not with the government but with the other new armies it has built in our society. The generation that has emerged from the WhatsApp University has become the private army shielding the government, and it demands the name and the address of anyone who is critical of the government. Soon they will be asking us for our Aadhaar numbers before deciding whether we can ask the Modi government any questions or not. A mob has been created which will harass and intimidate us on behalf of the power. This mob is answerable to no one. As long as it remains a cheerleader for the establishment, when we demand accountability from the government, the mob is let loose. This mob broadcasts new rumors and lies every day. These lies don't disappear into a void. I have seen them seep into lakhs, if not crores, of minds. The establishment has outsourced its powers to this tireless mob, which will surround one ev- anywhere at any time. Every day I am stalked by a new lie. Every day I fight a new lie. It would be exhausting, but for the occasional sign that the fight is not in vain. In January 2018, I was doing a series for prime time on jobs in the country. The government institutions that recruit people take an average of 4 years to fill a single vacancy when there are millions seeking jobs, and there are very few vacancies to begin with. After one of the first programs in the series, a young man, Rahul, phoned me from Bihar's Ara town. I had met him when I was in Bihar in 2015 covering the high voltage assembly elections. He was calling me now, over 2 years after that meeting. He said because he wanted to apologize. He said I had spoken about young people like him in my series of on jobs. No one else had bothered. And this when he and my many of his friends had abused and hated me for long. He said local members of the Bajrang Dal had convinced him that I was anti-Hindu and anti-Modi. I was anti-India. I was a communist. And my annual salary package was 1 crore plus perks. That would have made me a very rare Indian communist indeed. Rahul went on to say that he had also been taught to hate Muslims and had his head filled with the poison of communalism. He had wasted his life. He was purging himself of the poison. It's this poison of hate that I am fighting too. It has spread all around me. It has ruined many young minds. These young men wander about with explosive hatred inside them. They want to find a way out of the hell they have been pushed into. But there's hardly anyone around to help them climb out. On good days, I feel I can be the one to help. It's one of the things that keeps me focused, despite the torrent of abuse I face even when I write about something as neutral as the weather. These aren't routine abuses used by people. These are rocks and stones hurled by power that fall all around and create a wall of mental despondency. Enduring these abuses has begun to feel like an exercise in sensing the true heft of power. Abuse is a part of the culture of India. Abuses are exchanged during marriage. There is societal sanction for abuse in some relationship, but never before today has abuse been a weapon at the hands of the power. When the mob which stands in support of the power hurls abuse, it becomes so much more. That mob wants to terrify you. This then is the decision you must make. Do you want to be terrified? Even when an entire system exists, complete with abuse, and when there is no one to stand with you, when I cannot understand is what I cannot understand is what I cannot understand is what is it that one is doing that is so wrong? Why is it that for asking a few questions one should be punished so severely that a mob is set loose after one? I have been at the receiving end of people's anger in many places. Men have chased me sometimes, sticking sticks in hands. At others, people have gripped me by the collar. There have even been incidents of pushing and shoving. I have grown more and more alone in the course of this process. I started speaking out to combat my loneliness. That was the only act which would shatter my isolation. Each of these acts has made me less and less wanted in my profession. It has become normal in all conversations about journalism with friends for them to tell me that I will lose my job before anyone else and I won't find employment anywhere else either. As the advice about doors slamming shut in the professional space upon life itself has poured in, speaking out is the only window that I have sought through which air and light, though they may be in limited quantities, stream in. In 2015, Amir Khan expressed his concern, though in a muted fashion, about the climate of insecurity and his family felt in India and he was instantly attacked by the IT cell mob. That same mob remained silent at the Karni Sena's call to Kshatriya personnel in the army to stop eating in their messes to protest against the release of the film Padmavati. One man open One man openly talked about instigating communal rebellion within the army, and the entire government stood before that man, heads bowed down in supplication. The mob had established a government of fear. It can scare Amir Khan, claiming to be acting for others, because he practices a religion different from the one practiced by the mob. If it wants, that mob can strike fear into the minds of the Sanjay Leela Bansari too, who is of the same religion. There is just one law in operation, that is the law of fear. Every mob is based upon the foundation of the fear. Responding to external fears, many people started becoming part of the mob. These individuals first feared their own fellow citizens because of their religion. Then, once they joined the mob, they learned fear from the masters and the controllers of the mob. The reason for their silence was simple. They understood if the mob can do this to people, it can do same to me. People joined the mob to silence others. What they did not realize was that they had also learned to become and remain silent. On social media, too, people have stopped speaking out because of the terror of the IT cell. Women, especially, have stopped commenting on political matters in large numbers. They don't express their opinion in comments sections, but do so in messages sent to inboxes. Not just women, many other people now do the same. When I set up my Facebook page, Ravish ka page, many women inboxed me to that say that one second, I just lost the page. Huh. When I set up my page on Facebook, Ravish ka page, many women inboxed me to say that after having commented on my posts, they were trolled by people who would tell them the different ways in which they would be defamed and assaulted. Frequently, there are 1,000 comments on my posts, but the women among them don't number even 100. The abuses, which depend upon the power to propel themselves, work like bullets. Everyone is afraid of bullets. Even many boys have told me that they have been forbidden to comment on my page by their parents. Okay. The socialization of fear is complete. To be afraid is to be civilized in this new and feeble democracy. But I find it uncivilized and impolitic. It's an impoliticist that is inflicted upon I just lost it again. That is inflicted upon democracy. The IT cell has accomplished the task of laying down fear with ferocious detail and efficiency. The language of the IT cell has become the language of the ministers of the government as well as that of the supporters of the government. It was the government which used to strike fear in the hearts of the citizens. Now, the mainstream media and social media are its active allies. My phone number is frequently made public on Facebook and WhatsApp. The language of the provocation that accompanies the act of making my number public should be a part of the spatial study. Sentences are written in such a clever manner that on reading it isn't clear if a death threat is being issued or if it is being ordered that I should be verbally abused. This is the number of Pakistani Ravish Kumar. Please call him and give him a lesson in nationalism. The posts are in this tenor. All of this is enough to secure a man. The good thing was that as soon as my number was made public, some people became exceedingly happy. They called me to stay where they had got the number from, but also clarified that they weren't trolls but fans. These same people also later sent me screenshots of those pages which expressed hate. We seem to living in a climate of fear and suspicion. Hang on, not over the phone. I will call on WhatsApp. Talk to any official, you will find that he thinks that some minister is getting his phone tapped. Minister think that their seniors are recording their calls. Journalists feel that their conversations are being listened to. In every other conversation, reporters mention phone taping. No one has proof of these things, but everyone fears that their calls are being recorded. This fear is so pervasive that it makes even routine meetings suspicious. The suspicion, endangered by fear, has cast a deep effect on meetings and on the act of speaking. Ask yourself, has speaking out become fraught with risk? Does speaking about the government make you afraid? Who are you scared of? The government or that mob present around you in different avatars? Do you speak out up to a point and stop? Or do you continue and finish whatever it is that you wanted to say? Do you seek a society in which people crawl around the terrified of the government and some mob for no reason, and only those who sing praises of the government night and day strut with their chests puffed up? And why is it that those who criticize the government should be faced with fears and doubts? Only because there is no faith left in institutions, is it not? Who knows which case one will be embroiled in, and then one will be forced to make the rounds of the courts for years. This is very easily done in India. In Delhi, which is the center of India's power politics, the effect of the suspicions and doubts has changed. The way in which people have conversations. Some refrain from making photographs public on Facebook, while others don't communicate on WhatsApp so that texts can't be used as evidence. Whenever I meet people, I come away with yet one more new code word whose only purpose is that the government should not find out in case it tries to snoop. This statement is becoming ever more common. We should not talk about this on the phone. If politics transforms society to such an extent that it calls the dissenter a traitor, putting a barbed wire of intimidation between itself and citizens, then that is a form of violence too. For those people in Delhi who are connected with the governmental work, for those who assess and analyze the work of the government, cell phones, even the most expensive models, have become a source of great insecurity. They carry their phones upon their person but have no faith in them. Things have reached such a pass that when politicians from ruling party call, the word unknown flashes on the screen. Politicians too are very alert that no word of criticism should roll off their tongues. That finger which is raised against him, that hand which is raised against him, we will come together to break that hand or, if necessary, to hack it off. These words emerged from the mouth of Nityanand Rai, the secretary of the Bihar unit of the BJP and a member of the parliament, because it has now become normal to strike fear into the people's hearts. This is not the first statement of its kind in politics, nor is it the last. We will hear more of its kind in the future. All you can do is to don the mental armor on your fingers and on your neck, because matters have now gone upwards from cutting of fingers to hacking at the necks. During the controversy surrounding the release of the film Padmavati, now Padmavat, the official unit of the Haryana of the BJP, Suraj Pal announced a reward of 10 crore rupees to anyone who would bring the heads of Deepika Padukone and Sanjay Leela Bansali. A man from Meerut had earlier declared a reward of 5 crore rupees, which Suraj Pal up to 10 crore rupees, as if upgrading someone from economy class to business class. In that same Meerut, in 2006, Yaqub Qureshi of the Bahujan Samaj Party had announced a reward of 11 crores, which some media reports pegged at 51 crores for the head of a cartoonist from Denmark. I do hope that there isn't a bank in Meerut which gives out loans on EMIs for cutting of heads. Back then, such criminality was still abnormal. Now it is routine. On 12th April 2017, a politician from the BJP Yuva Morcha, Yogesh Varshne, declared that whoever brought him the head of the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee would be given 11 lakh rupees. It's a sign of the times that the amount of the sounds paltry. Could it be that the demonetization of November 2016 had an effect? Perhaps the man had run out of the cash. If you think that the threat to cut off hand in response to speaking against the Prime Minister is an uncommon one, you should pay attention to one more statistic which I have collected from Google between 2014 and 2017. More than 40 people were either arrested or had cases slapped against them for criticizing Prime Minister Modi and UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath or sharing posts about them. It isn't easy to speak out against power. Before you speak, you will have to choose between jail and amputation or a lynching, for mobs have no fear of the law. There are many different kinds of mobs. One mob might set out on the issue of the cow slaughter, another on the equally spurious issue of love jihad, yet another because a certain film was made. The social structures of different mobs are distinct in themselves, but they all have one thing in common: the cloak of religious fervor. The fear of these mobs is silencing many a young person who wants to speak about politics but is now staying away from Facebook altogether. This is how an atmosphere of silence is created. You don't speak when you should. The social sanction for speaking out is lessening. This isn't happening only because of the fear of governments or the mob, but also because devotion to religion have been strongly established in a large section of the citizenry. That devotion prepares the ground for the majority to remain silent. And because of that devotion, they are comfortable with the joke that is being made out of the democracy in the name of their religion. More precisely, given the behavior and the discourse of the present dispensation, one should call this devotion to the Hindu religion. The uncomfortable thing is that this devotion is not born out of the Hinduism capacious and generous traditions, but out of the fear of the handful of Gunda organizations. That citizen who is laid siege to by the fear generated by these organizations might believe himself to be at least one paper loyal to the Constitution, but this behavior is contrary to everything that the Constitution stands for. If Indian democracy if Indian democracy is to be modernized, it is vital that devotion to the constitution of the land be widely promoted. Blind devotion to any religion will always run down and deem inferior this devotion to the constitution, which is why when the secretary of the Shri Rajput Karni Sena, Mahipal Singh Makarna, called out the Kshatriya soldiers of the army to boycott food in their messes to protest against the film Padmavati, the common man did not understand what that implied, and none of the political parties had the courage to unreservedly denounce this call. The Rajputs protesting the film could have registered their protest using constitutional means. Instead, they went out on the street, unleashing violence, what emboldened some of them so much that they could stone a bus full of school children. Why did the government and the opposition not unite to condemn them and ensure action against them? Why was there no public outcry? The majority population did not demand action. Was their devotion to Hinduism stopping them? Would they have been silent, stayed silent if people at a different faith had stoned a school bus? How has a shared religious identity come to mean this? If this, if it is this blind religiosity that gives license to the mob is greater even than the constitution. A powerful fear is created over maniacal debates on TV channels. Many news anchors swarm like fearsome attackers all over these who ask questions. The common viewer of the TV channel sees this and starts losing confidence. He can see what becomes of those who raise questions. He feels that there is danger in standing apart from the mob, so he stays quiet. And by his silence, he becomes a part of the mob. Fear has seeped into the people's consciousness. This has had greatest effect on the minority community. It has begun to keep out of every kind of debate, and the space which has been vacated by the community has been filled up by those Maulanas who do represent Muslims but speak like those very majority institutions in which communal agendas these Maulanas are caught up. These Maulanas have made Muslims even more insecure to the extent that this Muslim friend advises me that I should avoid platforms where issues related to community are being debated. So, this is the extent to which they have been made to feel politically irrelevant. Most Muslims now feel that if they were to take to streets with their demands, the media will see only their beards or their sherwanis and it will not talk about their issues. This is what the acceptance of one's status as a second class citizen means. The status of second class citizenry has fallen not just to the minority community but also to the people from the majority community. In this democracy of fear, religion is not the only determinant of minority status. The act of questioning the government too can transform you into a minority. Ravishji, aren't you afraid of speaking out? How do you speak out in such an atmosphere? Doesn't your family forbid you? I have no substantial answers to these questions. What is it that I am saying, after all, that I should be specially praised for it? I am only expressing the views of the people. Why should anyone feel that I possess an aura of courage within me which people can mine by repeatedly asking me how I do my job? Are people afraid? Everyone who asks me these questions feels that Ravish will give a fitting reply. He will say that he drinks a glass of Bonvita before leaving home,
or that he offers Laddu to Hanuman. I have no magical mantra as far as the act of the speaking out is concerned. I know that power will make my life such a hell that it will be difficult for me to survive in my profession. There are many Hindi language papers already who do not accept my articles. Before 2014, I would be irritated by constant phone calls from these same newspapers asking me to write for them. What I say isn't very brave in itself. Those who hear what I have to say are so terrified that my speaking out at all seems courageous. They ask how it is that I speak when they are rendered mute by fear. There are many who joke that Bihari people feel no fear. Which Bihari would not feel chuffed hearing good words about his home? But this is not a question about being Bihari. Marathis speak out, Bengalis do, Gujaratis speak out, and those who speak out in Gujarat have heard and seen much worse. I am not the only one doing the talking. Many other journalists are writing too, but now newspapers in their respective language do not publish what they write. To speak out is not difficult. What is hard is to walk through the tunnel of fear before the act of talking. That fear is not always the fear of the power. One is scared of making mistakes. The fear of possible reactions to what one has to say also bothers one. The battle with fear begins once you have said what you wanted to. It is then you understand whether you have the courage to face that which you have said. When friends call, exhorting you to stay alert, to stay quiet, these times are bad. There might be just one call out of 10 in which the caller might say, "It doesn't matter, don't worry, keep speaking." Most of the rest have faith neither in the institutions of the land not in the society, and everyone feels that the world doesn't care at all. Advice given by the friends and the family also creates fear within you. I was giving a speech at the press club after the Gauri Lankesh was murdered. Many of the people present there were looking at me as they might have looked at Gauri. Their eyes were filled with a sense of warning. They put their hands on my shoulder as they left, as if to tell me, "You are next." They were loading their fears onto me. Many viewers called me after they saw my speech at the press club. For a few days, I kept walking out about like a living corpse. Messages were arriving in my mobile phone inbox urging me to take care of myself, get some security, they said, at least register an FIR with the police. Viewers who were watching me were very stressed. The IT cell had performed its task of striking fear very well. That you live amidst such well meaning advice is enough. In today's time, we are giving out fears away to others. People are sharing their fears by becoming supporters of the government too. I frequently meet people who tell me, "Stop digging around Modi ji's foundation, reform yourself." Is all this fear which surrounds us because of Modi ji? Really? Will it go away if we stop being critical of the Modi ji? I don't think so. The jinn is out of the bottle. And what I am writing or broadcasting in my programs that a support of the government should fear that some game of the establishment will be disrupted. I at least harbor no such illusion. All the rules which once governed the media are destroyed after all. 90% of the media is filled with praise. Wherever there are critics, they are being attacked. They are called upon to be more than impartial. But those who break all rules of journalism to play in the lap of the powerful to know no definition of impartiality. Just as an individual seeks a way to free himself from fear, an alive and conscious society wades war to emerge from its fears. If you live in the fear of being killed, you aren't really alive. Even though you may be physically so, you can be sure that you are alive only when you speak out. He who cannot misses out in life. So everyone should speak. It is very important also that we begin teaching our children to speak up and to speak out right from a young age and at home. Don't stop them. We keep forbidding our children at home, and one day the fear that they feel spreads out of the home and into the world. Most of our fears are created and sustained in our homes, where we are taught to keep silent. Ask yourself one question: are you afraid of speaking out, of criticizing the authority? Why are you afraid? Do you choose a system only to inflict fear upon yourself? Are you afraid of being killed or being isolated or being alone? If you aren't fearful of being killed, then also banish the fear that you will fall alone among your friends. You can risk at least this much. If you have friends whose devotion is to something you think to be wrong, tell them that. If you cannot speak up before friends, how will you ever stand before the government to criticize it? You will have to start practicing speaking up somewhere. Things aren't so bad yet that no one can speak out. If you are afraid of criticizing the prime minister, say whatever you want against the first Prime Minister Nehru. What you say will not affect Nehru in any way, and you will learn to stand before an institution such the Prime Minister and ask questions. Just make sure that your questions are correct when you do ask them. Check your facts. Don't allow hatred towards the person to seep into your questions. He who is in the dominating position of the power decides the rule of morality. He might himself be immoral, but will request you to stick to the principles of ethics and morality. That too is one of the conditions of speaking out. So keep gathering the maximum points on the morality. Stick to ethics at all times. Keep your life clean and uncluttered, and keep speaking out. So this was the first chapter from his book. ये था स्पीकिंग आउट. यहाँ पे चैट में क्या चल रहा है? यहाँ तो बड़ा चल रहा है. ओ यकता आए हैं. अस्सलाम अलैकुम यकता. अनहज आज न्यूज़ परानी थी. यहाँ बहुत कुछ हो रहा है चैट बॉक्स में. अब मैं सारा तो पढ़ नहीं सकता. चलिए ठीक है. सो दिस वाज द फर्स्ट चैप्टर फ्रॉम द बुक. ठीक है ना? फ्री वॉइस ऑन डेमोक्रेसी कल्चर. तो कल हम इसका दूसरा. सो अगर आप चाहते हो इसको कंटिन्यू करें तो बता दीजिए. जस्ट टेल मी राइट नाउ. दूसरा चैप्टर जो इसका है वो है रोबो पब्लिक एंड द बिल्डिंग ऑफ अ न्यू डेमोक्रेसी. इफ यू वांट मी टू कंटिन्यू प्लीज टेल मी क्विकली इन द चैट बॉक्स. या अगर आपको लग रहा है कि ये सब बोरिंग है, हम चेंज करेंगे. वी विल चेंज द कंटेंट. तो आई फील लाइक रूमी का एक दो पॉइंट्स उनकी पढ़ेंगे. देन वी शुड एंड इट. यकता इज सेइंग बहुत खूब. क्या अंदाज है, क्या बात है. तो अगर आपको लगता है कि वी शुड चेंज द कंटेंट तो बता दीजिए. इससे क्या होगा कि इससे आपके माइंड में भी ना बहुत सारे आइडियाज जो हैं एक दूसरे के साथ कोलाइड करेंगे और बहुत सारे आइडियाज की सिंथेसिस होगी. आप फिर सोचने लगेंगे अबाउट डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ लाइफ. जब डिफरेंट ऑथर्स का पढ़ते हैं तो ऐसा होता है. अदरवाइज अगर आप एक ही ऑथर के साथ स्टक करोगे अपनी जिंदगी तो इट विल बी डिफिकल्ट फॉर यू टू गेट मोल्डेड इनटू आ पर्सनालिटी. तो थोड़ा सा मैं देखता हूँ कोई पॉइंट मिली मुझे इनकी. हमने कहाँ तक इनका पढ़ा था. अच्छा अब मैं ये चलिए मैं कहना भूल गया. आई एम रियली सॉरी कि एक सेकेंड. हाँ आई जस्ट फॉरगॉट कि हमारा जो चैनल है वो 900 क्रॉस कर गया. बहस वन होते छठा लफ्जन मज जार पार कर. हाँ मांग मांग के सब्सक्राइबर्स को हमने 900 तक पहुंचा ही दिया. एंड इट्स बीन ओनली 2 months. हाँ हमने 2 महीनों में ये कर लिया. वी डिड इट only in 2 months. uh, we have begged for subscribers and we got them. ठीक है ना. तो अभी मैं रूमी का खोल रहा हूँ ये वाला बुक. अभी देखते हैं इनका पढ़ते हैं. एक सिंपल सी पोएम देखूंगा मैं। अगर आप चाहते हो आई शुड कंटिन्यू विद द बुक इटसेल्फ, दूसरा चैप्टर, तो मैं दूसरा चैप्टर पढ़ूंगा। अदरवाइज अगर आप यू वांट मी टू रीड अ पोएम तो वही करेंगे। थैंक यू, थैंक यू, थैंक यू इसरा, थैंक यू, थैंक यू। यम ज़र पर कर इनमें तम सब्सक्राइबर्स। ठीक है ना? चलिए, अच्छी बात है ना, 900 तक पहुंच गए हम विद इन 2 मंथ्स। दिस इज अ बिग थिंग। चाहे कैसे भी करके हमने लाए 900 सब्सक्राइबर्स। नाउ हमें और 100 चाहिए, देन हमारे पास 1000 सब्सक्राइबर्स होंगे। आई थिंक अराउंड 550 घंटे तो हमारे पास हो ही गए होंगे वॉचिंग आवर्स के। हमें 4000 घंटे लाने हैं। तो आज से कंटिन्यू रखना है हमें। 1K पर क्या मिलेगा इंशाल्लाह, जब 4000 घंटे मुकम्मल हो जाएंगे, हमारे जो डेली लिसनर्स हैं उनको गिफ्ट मिलेगा। और बिल्कुल उनके घर पे गिफ्ट मैं डिलीवर कराऊंगा। बस उनको अपना एड्रेस मुझे भेजना है। इंशाल्लाह वी शैल कंटिन्यू फॉर दिस मंथ। आई थिंक इसी महीने हम कंप्लीट कर ही लेंगे। तो हमारे पास बस और 100 सब्सक्राइबर्स चाहिए, और हमें चाहिए और 3500 घंटे। 3500 घंटे मैं किस तरह लाऊंगा वो मैं लाऊंगा, वो उसकी चिंता नहीं है। 100 सब्सक्राइबर्स की चिंता है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे सब्सक्राइबर मिलना बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है, मांग मांग के, मांग मांग के। तो आप खुद ही ध्यान लगाइए कि 10.6K आर ऑन ट्विटर, स्टिल दे आर नॉट सब्सक्राइबिंग। को मैसेज करके, आई ऑलमोस्ट डीएम ईच एंड एवरीवन who keeps on following me these days on Twitter, उनको मैसेज करता हूँ कि प्लीज सब्सक्राइब कीजिए और अपना वैल्यूबल फीडबैक दीजिए, बट दे डोंट केयर। ठीक है ना? नोबडी केयर्स। तो मैं ज़रा ये पढ़ लेता हूँ और बता दीजिए क्या करना है। रूमी का पढ़े या रवीश का कंटिन्यू करें, बता दीजिए। आर यू देयर? कौन कौन अभी लाइव चैट पे हैं? जल्दी बता दीजिए। व्हाट शुड वी डू नाउ? क्योंकि रवीश की किताब का एक चैप्टर तो हो गया। आप चाहते हो कि मैं दूसरा चैप्टर उठाऊं या मैं कुछ और पढूं? रूमी, सिना मेरे सिंह रूमी, बाकी सब कहाँ गए? जल्दी बता दीजिए, जल्दी जल्दी जल्दी। मुझे लगता है सब सो गए हैं। कंटिन्यू रवीश। Ainan is saying Ravish. Okay, 2-1. Ainan is saying Ravish. Naman is saying Rumi. Mudassir is saying Rumi. It's 2-1. Istarab. Rumi. 3-1. Ainan. I am really sorry. Rumi is so popular. Okay, it's 3-1. चल ठीक है फिर। Okay. हाँ, 4-1. Okay, ये रूमी हो, रूमी wins, रूमी wins. So I'll just search out poem. तो आई थिंक हम वहीं पे चले जाते हैं जहाँ पे हमने छोड़ दिया था, वहीं से उठाते हैं। समवेयर देयर क्लोजर। हाँ, डिजोल्वर ऑफ शुगर हमने पढ़ ली थी ना। हाँ, हमने ये पढ़ ली थी। इसके बाद है कंट्रोलिंग डिजायर बॉडी, हाउ डिड यू किल योर रोस्टर। ठीक है, ठीक है, ठीक है, ये भी हमने पढ़ ली थी। अ, ये वाली टैटूइंग द काजविन, हाँ, लॉयन कैसे बनाता है वगैरह वगैरह, वो सब कुछ हमने पढ़ लिया था। सेंटर ऑफ द फायर, ये भी हमने पढ़ लिया था। ये भी हमने पढ़ लिया था। ये बड़ी पोएम है। ओके, देयर इज अ पोएम whose title is फास्टिंग। ठीक है, तो ये हमने शायद पढ़ी थी, लेकिन फिर से पढ़ दूंगा। देयर इज अ हिडन स्वीटनेस इन द स्टमक्स एम्प्टीनेस। देयर इज अ hidden sweetness in the stomach's emptiness. We are lutes, no more, no less.
If the sound box is stuffed with full of anything, no music. If the brain and the belly are burning clean with fasting, every moment of the new song comes out of the fire. The fog clears, and the new energy makes you run up the steps in front of you. Be emptier and cry like reed instruments cry. Emptier, write secrets with the reed pen. When you are full of food and drink, an ugly metal statue sits where your spirit should. When you fast, good habits gather like friends who want to help. Fasting is Solomon's dog. Don't give it to some illusion and lose your power. But even if you have lost all will and control, they come back when you fast, like soldiers appearing out of the ground, pennants flying above them. A table descends on your tents, Jesus' table, except to see it. When you fast, this table spread out with the food, better than the broth of cabbage. Bismillah. It's a habit to walk slowly. You hold a grudge for years with such heaviness. How can you be modest? With such attachments, do you expect to arrive anywhere? Be wide as ear to learn a secret. Now, right now, you are equal portions clay and water and thick mud. Abraham learned how the sun and the moon and the stars all set. He said, no longer will I try to assign partners for God. You are so weak. Give up to grace. The oceans take care of each wave till it gets to shore. You need more help than you know. You are trying to live your life in open scaffolding. Say Bismillah in the name of God, as the priest does with a knife when he offers an animal. Bismillah your old self to find your new self. कितना खूबसूरत आइडिया है. बिस्मिल्लाह योरसेल्फ. खुद को ज़बह कर दो, अपने पुराने नफ्स को ज़बह कर दो और अपनी नई ज़िंदगी को उभारो, नई ज़िंदगी को शुरू करो. When weaning yourself, ये भी मैंने पढ़ी है और इसको मैंने समझाया भी है. Little by little wean yourself. This is the gist of what I have to say. From an embryo whose nourishment comes in the blood, move to an infant drinking milk, to a child on solid food, to a searcher after wisdom, to a hunter of more invisible game. Think how it is to have a conversation with an embryo. You might say the world outside is vast and intricate. There are wheat fields and mountain passes and orchards and in bloom. At night, there are millions of galaxies in sunlight and the beauty of friends dancing at a wedding. You ask the embryo why he or she stays cooped in the dark with the eyes closed. Listen to the answer. There is no other world. I only know what I have experienced. You must be hallucinating after the meditation. Now I see something in my listeners that won't let me continue this way. The ocean flows back in and puts up a foam barrier and then withdraws. After a while, it will come again. This audience wants to hear more about the visiting Sufi and his friends in meditation. But be discerning. Don't think this as a normal character in an ordinary story. The ecstatic meditation ended. Dishes of food were brought out. The Sufi remembered his donkey. ये मैंने पढ़ी है. I'll skip it out. ठीक है ना, ये मैंने पढ़ी है. हाँ, The dog in the doorway, I think ये भी मैंने पढ़ी है. मैं skip कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि ये हमने पढ़ी है. सोहबत सोहबत भी मैंने पढ़ी है. You said, who did you come with the majestic imagination you gave me? ये मैंने पढ़ी है. मैं देख रहा हूँ कि हमने कौन 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 सी पढ़ी है. Mouse and a frog, we have gone through this. Long string, I think ये भी हमने पढ़ी है. नहीं, हाँ ये भी हमने पढ़ी है. Force of friendship, we have gone through this as well. The vigil, ये हमने पढ़ी है. ये यही से हम स्टार्ट करेंगे. आई थिंक वी हैव स्टॉप्ड हियर. द विजिल के पास हम रुके हैं. अन शुक्र शुक्र खुदा इसको यकता. हाँ, यहाँ से हम शुरू कर रहे हैं. Don't go to sleep one night. What you most want will come to you then. Warmed by a sun inside, you will see wonders. Tonight, don't put your head down. Be tough, and strength will come. That which adoration adores appears at night. Those asleep may miss it. One night, Moses stayed awake and asked and saw light in a tree. Then he walked at night for 10 years until finally he saw the whole tree illuminated. Muhammad rode his horse through the night sky. The day is for work, the night is for love. Don't let someone bewitch you. Some people sleep at night, but not lovers. They sit in the dark and talk to God. Who told David, those who sleep all night, every night, and claim to be connected to us, they lie? Lovers can't sleep when they feel the privacy of the beloved all around them. Someone who's thirsty may sleep for a little while, but he or she will dream of water, a full jar beside a creek, and the spiritual water you get from another person. All night, listen to the conversation, stay up. This moment is all there is. Death will take it away soon enough. You will be gone, and this earth will be left without a sweetheart, nothing but weeds growing inside the thorns. I am through. Read the rest of this poem in the dark tonight. Do I have a head and feet? Shamas, so loud by Tabrizians, I closed my lips and I wait for you to come and open them. A certain person came to a friend's door and knocked. ये देखिए वही पोएम है जो मैंने इससे पहले बहुत टाइम पहले पढ़ी थी. Who is there? He answered, it's me. The friend answered, go away. There is no place for raw meat at this table. The individual went wandering for a year. Nothing but the fire of separation can change the hypocrisy and the ego. The person returned completely cooked and walked down in front of the friend's house and gently knocked. Who is it? He answered, you. Please come in. Myself. There is no place in this house for two. The doubled end of the thread is not what goes through the eye of the needle. It's a single pointed, fine down thread end, not a big ego beast with the baggage. But how can a camel be thinned to a thread? With the shears of the practice, we're doing so, and with the help from the one which brings impossibilities to pass, who quiets willfulness, who gives sight to one blind from birth. Every day that one does something, take that as your text. Every day God sends forth three powerful energies, one from the sperm of the father into the mother, so growth may begin. Two, a birth from the womb of the ground, so male and female may spring into existence. Three, there is a surge up from the surface into what is beyond dying, that the real beauty of creating can be recognized. There is no way to ever say this. Let's return to the true friends whose thread became single, who spill with their two letters the original word. B and E tightened around subjects and objects that one knot may hold them. Two scissors, blades make one cut. And watch two men washing clothes. One makes dry clothes wet, and the other makes wet clothes dry. And watch two men washing clothes. One makes dry clothes wet, the other makes wet clothes dry. These seem to be thwarting each other, but their work is a perfect harmony. Every holy person seems to have a different doctrine and practice, but there is really only one work. Someone listening to a millstone fall asleep. No matter, the stone keeps turning. Water from the mountain far above the mills keeps flowing down. The sleepers will get their bread. Underground, it moves without sound and without repetition. Show us where that source of speech is that has no alphabet. That spaciousness, where we are now in a narrow fantasy that comes from there, and the actual, the outside world is ever even narrower. Narrowness is pain, and the cause of narrowness is manyness. Creation was spoken with one sound, B E, two letters B and E to record it came after. The meaning of the sound is resonance, R1. There is no
is no way to ever say this in so many words and no place to stop saying it. Meanwhile, the lion and the wolf were fighting. The servant who loved his prayers. At dawn, a certain rich man wanted to go to the steam baths. He woke up his servant, Sunkur, who, get moving, get the basin and towels and the clay for washing, and let's go to the baths. Sunkur immediately collected what was needed, and they set outside by side along the road. As they passed the mosque, the call to prayer sounded. Sunkur loved his 5 times prayers. Please, Master, rest on this bench for a while that I may recite Surah 98, which begins, You who treat your slave with kindness. The master sat on the bench outside while Sunkur went in. When prayers were over and the priest and all worshippers had left, still Sunkur remained inside. The master waited and waited. Finally, he yelled in the mosque, Sunkur, why didn't you come out? I can't. This clever one won't let me. Have a little more patience. I hear you out there. 7 times the master waited, and then he shouted. Sunkur's reply was always the same. Not yet. He won't let me come out. But there is one in there but you. Everyone else has left. Who makes you sit still so long? The one who keeps me in here is the one who keeps you out there. The same who will let you in will let not me out. The ocean will not allow its fish out of itself, nor does it let animals where the subtle and delicate fish move. The land creators lumber along on the ground. No cleverness can change this. There is only one opener for the lock of these matters. Forget your figuring, forget yourself. Listen to your friend. When you become totally obedient to that one, you will be free. फोर्स्ड फ्रेंडशिप के बाद पढ़नी है। देखिए, टू बी ट्रू, आई डोंट एक्चुअली रिमेंबर कि हमने कहाँ पे छोड़ दिया था, टू बी वेरी फ्रैंक। तो अब जो मुझे लगता है कि हमने नहीं पढ़ी है तो वो मैं पढ़ता हूँ। आई एम रियली सॉरी। तो बाकी काम भी होते हैं। कल हम इंशाल्लाह यही मिलेंगे एंड हम रवीश कुमार का दूसरा चैप्टर उठाएंगे, रवीश कुमार की बुक का। ठीक है ना? आई थिंक इट्स गेटिंग टू लेट। 12 it is. Inshallah कल मिलते हैं. Let us finish and let's finish it with a poem. किन की poem उठाएंगे? जॉन साहब की, या फिर जॉन को नहीं, आज थोड़े डिफरेंट पढ़ते हैं। किनका पढ़ेंगे? इनका देखता हूँ मैं। ये थोड़े डिफरेंट पोएट हैं, इनका मैं पढ़ता हूँ। नाम नहीं बताऊंगा, बस इनका काम पढ़ूंगा। नीयते शौक बर न जाए कहीं, नीयते शौक बर न जाए कहीं, तू भी दिल से उतर न जाए कहीं। आज देखा है तुझको देर के बाद, आज का दिन गुजर न जाए कहीं। न मिला कर उदास लोगों से, न मिला कर उदास लोगों से, हुस्न तेरा बिखर न जाए कहीं। आरज़ू है कि तू यहाँ आए और फिर उम्र भर न जाए कहीं। जी जलता यूं और सोचता हूँ, राएगा ये हुनर न जाए कहीं। आओ कुछ देर रो ही ले, फिर ये दरिया उतर न जाए कहीं। नीयत शौक भर न जाए कहीं, तू भी दिल से उतर न जाए कहीं। इन्हीं का और एक कलाम पढ़ूंगा कि फरमाते हैं कि गए दिनों का सुराग लेकर किधर से आया, किधर गया वो। गए दिनों का सुराग लेकर किधर से आया, किधर गया वो।
अजीब मानूस अजनबी था, मुझे तो हैरान कर गया वो। बस एक मोटी सी छब दिखाकर, बस एक मीठी सी धुन सुनाकर, सिताराए शाम बन के आया, बरंगे ख्वाब सहर गया। खुशी की रुत हो के गम का मौसम, नजर उसे ढूंढती है हरदम। वो भूवे गुल था कि नगमे जां, मेरे दिल में उतर गया वो। न अब वो यादों का चढ़ता दरिया, न फुर्सतों की उदास बरखा। यूं ही जरा सी कसक है दिल में, जो जख्म गहरा था भर गया वो। जब संभालने लगी है जां भी, बदल चला दौराने आसमां भी। जो रात बरी थी टल गई है, जो दिन कड़ा था गुजर गया वो। बस एक मंजिल तो है, फर्क मुझ में उसमें, गुजर गया मैं, ठहर गया वो। शिकस्ता पा राह में खड़ा हूं, गए दिनों को बुला रहा हूं। जो काफिला मेरा हमसफर था, मिसाले गर्दे सफर गया वो। मेरा तो खून हो गया है पानी, सितमगरों की पलक न भीगी। मेरा तो खून हो गया है पानी, सितमगरों की पलक न भीगी। जो नाला उठा था रात दिल से, न जाने क्यों बेअसर गया वो मेघ का देखो जगाने वाला, वो रात की नींद उड़ाने वाला। ये आज क्या उसके जी में आई, कि शाम होते ही घर गया वो हिज्र की रात का सितारा, वो हम नफ्स हम सुखन हमारा। सदा रहे उसका नाम प्यारा, सुना है कर रात मर गया वो जिसके शाने पे हाथ रखकर सफर किया तूने मंजिलों का। तेरी गली से न जाने क्यों आज सर झुकाए गुजर गया वो रात का बेनवा मुसाफिर, वो तेरा शायर, वो तेरा डैश। तेरी गली तक तो हमने देखा था, फिर न जाने किधर गया वो। ये सारिम साहब, बहुत जल्दी नहीं आते हो आप। ये क्या हो रहा है? अच्छे राइटर्स को पढ़ें प्लीज। जी जनाब, अभी देखा मैंने फोन, रवीश कुमार मतलब क्या हो रहा है। अच्छा, रवीश कुमार की जो किताब है उसका एक चैप्टर हमने पढ़ लिया, ऑलमोस्ट 1 घंटे, 1 घंटा कुछ मिनट्स के लिए, 1 घंटा 10 मिनट शायद। उसके बाद हमने रूमी की एक दो पॉइंट्स पढ़ी। उसके बाद हमने ये जनाब को पढ़ा जो मैं अभी पढ़ रहा था। तो गाइस, गॉइज, इट्स एनफ। और आप कोशिश कीजिए, अगर आपके पास 2-3 डिवाइसेस हैं, उनसे लॉग इन करके यहाँ पे रहिए। कल से कल से मैं कहूँगा, सबसे कहूँगा, अगर घर में कोई भी डिवाइस एक्स्ट्रा है जिसमें यूट्यूब एक्सेसिबल है, तो प्लीज उससे लॉग इन करके इस स्ट्रीम पे जो है आप लाइव रहिए। मैं इसलिए उसकी वॉल्यूम जो है डाउन कीजिए, म्यूट कर दीजिए, बस लाइव रखिए, साइड में डिवाइस रखिए। क्यों? क्योंकि हमारे जो स्ट्रीमिंग आवर्स हैं वो बढ़ेंगे। अगर हमारे जो यूजर्स हैं वो ज्यादा रहें स्ट्रीमिंग आवर्स पे, तो हमारा वॉच आवर जो है बढ़ जाएगा। अभी 500 कुछ घंटे हैं। इफ सपोजिटली 10 रिमेन हियर, 10 लिसनर्स रिमेन हियर फॉर 1 आवर, दैट मीन्स वी हैव 10 आवर्स। यूट्यूब काउंट्स इट एज 10 आवर्स। अगर 20 रहेंगे 1 घंटे के लिए, तो वो 20 घंटे। 30 रहेंगे, दैट मीन 30 घंटे। आई डोंट नो, पोलो को हरा दिया है 51% लोगों ने रवीश को किया वोट। एंड आई एम पुटिंग माई हैंड ऑन माई हार्ट, आई आई एम जनरसली थैंकिंग देम। और मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि थैंक गॉड हम आपके पोलो कोलोहो से बच गए। क्या करें, हम फैन है रवीश कुमार के, समझे का। नमस्कार, मैं रवीश कुमार। तो चलिए चलते हैं फिर। और प्लीज कल से अगर आपके पास एक्स्ट्रा डिवाइस है, कहीं भी लैपटॉप कुछ भी हो, उस पे आप वो दूसरी आईडी, तीसरी आईडी, जितनी भी आपकी आईडीज है, उनसे लॉगिन करके स्ट्रीम पे रख दीजिए, ताकि हमारा जो स्ट्रीमिंग काउंट है वो बढ़ जाए, और हमारा जो ब्लू टिक है वो आ जाएगी इसके बाद। 1000 सब्सक्राइबर्स एंड 4000 आवर्स ऑफ स्ट्रीमिंग। कौन है ये लोग, कहाँ से आते हैं? मेरे ही मोहल्ले से आते हैं, मेरी आइडियोलॉजी से आते हैं, मेरे घर से आते हैं। रवीश कुमार, मैं उसका फैन हूँ। टेक केयर। Bye.